Hey, everybody. We are going to give it a second here and just let everybody trickle in. But we're super excited about the conversation that we're going to have today with Todd DeWalt. And again, want to just give everybody a second to get logged in here, and we'll get started here in just about a minute or so.
And while we're waiting, if it's okay, folks, open up the chat box and type in what kind of work you do and where you're at in the world, just to give us an idea of who's on here. And we can sort of customize things to you potentially. So yeah, open up the chat box. That's going to be the place to post your questions as we go along, post your responses, but open up the chat box. Let us know where you're at, what kind of work you do.
Yeah, great point.
Right.
Awesome. We got some Utah. Awesome.
Right. Yeah. Representing Utah. Big fans. You guys are BusyBusy. You're big fans of Utah, right?
Yeah, big fans. Southern Utah, Northern Utah, all of it. All right. We will go ahead and get started, and we'll let people continue to trickle on in here. So we're super excited to have this conversation about how to get out of your business, how to make it run without you, how to systematize it. And to have this conversation, we thought it made a ton of sense to bring Todd DeWalt on here and have this conversation with us, because Todd is the creator and host of the Construction Leading Edge podcast. If you guys are not familiar with that podcast, go check it out. Make it a part of your podcast listening list. And not only that, but Todd, over the span of his career, has owned construction companies. He's done jobs ranging from bathroom remodels to high rises. So at this point now, Todd coaches construction companies on exactly this, on how to systematize your business, on how to make your company more profitable and get you out of it so that it runs without you if needed. So again, super excited to have you on here, Todd. I'll turn the time over to you, and we can kick this off.
Sounds great. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Bracken. I'm going to turn off my camera and we will jump into it. If you're just joining, couple of things. First of all, open up that chat box. Let us know where you're from and what kind of work you do. That's also going to be the place to respond. A couple of other recommendations I would make would be to single task. Resist the urge to multitask, because we're going to talk about a lot of really practical, really tactical strategies you can use and some action items you can take out of this that you can put to work for you right away. So let's jump into it. I'll talk about who I am in just a minute, but this is the get out of your construction business, how to make it run without you. And we'll start by, let me check in with you and ask you this question. I'm curious, are you experiencing any of these symptoms that I'm about to list off? These are the top 10 symptoms that we hear from construction business owners we talk to, and we talk to hundreds every year. Let me know if any of these sound familiar. Details are falling through the cracks. Maybe you hear yourself saying or thinking, I have to step in and fix things. Seems like every problem comes to me. I spend too much time in day-to-day firefighting. Everything is in my head. My expectations, our processes, everything's in my head. The business consumes too much of my life. I'm working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I'm not present at home. Maybe wondering, who do we hire first? Should we hire or should we lay people off? We don't know. We're constantly in reactive mode. Our customers seem to be losing confidence in us. And gosh, it feels like we're just winging it. Or maybe people are telling you, we're just winging it, or you're just winging it. I'm curious, which of these do you hear yourself saying or thinking most often? If one of those stands out to you, put the number in the chat box. Is it number 2, number 5, number 7? Real quickly, just put those in the chat box. All right, Rick Livingston said, every one of the 10. All right, you are not alone. Which one of those stands out to you? Just put that number in the chat box. And if it's any consolation, you're not alone. Yeah. So let me ask you another question. A couple of questions, actually. What if you're about to lose a key employee because of the chaos in your business? I spoke to a builder recently who lost a superintendent and a director of operations in the same week. What would that do to you? What details are falling through the cracks right now that won't show up for weeks or months? How much profit is bleeding out? We'll talk about that in detail in a few minutes. And look, you started the business, maybe you're wearing a lot of hats, maybe you're wearing all the hats, but how are you going to get out of it? To step away for a 3-day weekend, to take a vacation and leave your laptop at home, to get away long enough to learn how to fly fish properly, to go camping, go to the beach, to go to Europe for 2 weeks, maybe to turn it over to your kids or to key employees, or maybe sell it someday. So that's what we're going to talk about today, how to get out of your construction business to the degree that you want to get out of it. So in the next 60 minutes, if I do my job, here's what you're going to walk away from. How to begin to design your company to run without you, and maybe even a few surprising reasons why you should. What to do if everything about your business is stuck in your head. How you can very simply eliminate 80% of your preventable chaos, schedule delays, and profit bleeds on your jobs. The JETS thinking trap that could be, if you're like most people, the root cause of a lot of your job site chaos and how to solve it. And you'll also uncover the kryptonite to every construction software, including BusyBusy. Look, BusyBusy has a lot of incredibly powerful tools, but there's one thing that makes it weak, maybe even useless, and it has nothing to do with the software. And by the way, this kryptonite is also the kryptonite to every software program. So be sure to stick around until you find out what that is. So I'm going to boil this down, and I want to show you 3 secrets that construction business owners who have successfully escaped day-to-day firefighting, who have successfully set up their businesses to run without them, understand. There are 3 secrets to getting out of your business. Number 1, focus on nailing the handoff with your team. Number 2, a secret is that growing your team can mean less work for you, not more. And you can actually increase your profits by growing your team. A lot of people think more people means more work, and more people means less profit, but those are misconceptions. I want to give you a bonus resource. At the end of this, the reality is one of the biggest problems we have in the construction industry is a retention problem. And one of the best ways to improve your retention is to have a good onboarding process. So I want to give you an onboarding guide, 59 questions that your new employee needs you to answer. They may not ask these questions, but they need you to answer them. So stick around. I'm going to show you how you can get your hands on that at the end. Let's talk for just a couple of minutes about who I am. My name is Todd DeWalt. I'm the founder of the Construction Leading Edge podcast that's been around since 2014. It's been downloaded 1.6 million times. There are 280 plus episodes or so out there. I've created courses and programs for construction business owners, including how to get paid for estimates, a construction financial masterclass. I lead the Builder Mastermind group that's been around for about 3 years. And I'm the founder and host of the Construction Leading Edge podcast. And there's a specific episode that just came out this week you may be interested in. It is with Isaac Barlow, who's the CEO of BusyBusy. Fantastic conversation. So I encourage you to go check out episode 288 of the Construction Leading Edge podcast. I also created the Systematize Your Construction Business program. Over the past several years, 5 years since I've been doing this full time. I've hosted live events and workshops for construction business owners. I've spoken for the Associated Builders and Contractors. I've spoken at the International Builders Show and for several other groups. Also done 8 or so live events for our own folks. A little bit about my background. I've been in construction since 1997, mostly in project management, operations. I've built projects ranging up to this one. This was about $110 million high-rise senior living community that took about 2.5 years to build. I led the design, development, construction of that. I did the same for this $30 million office building for Valvoline in Lexington, Kentucky. I've led the design, development, construction of about 2 million square feet of industrial projects like these. These are 640,000 square foot warehouses. I've owned my own construction business. I've run construction businesses. So over the past 25 years, I have led construction teams, businesses, and projects totaling somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million. So let's get into those secrets, all right? So before we dig into the first secret, let's talk about some myths. There are some myths about implementing new systems that include statements like, it's really hard to implement meaningful change, or maybe even it's impossible to get my people to follow a process. It's impossible to get people to change. Maybe you've given up on creating standard operating procedures because you've created them and your team just won't follow them. Maybe you think, well, I know I need to document processes, but where should I start? I don't want to create stacks of 3-ring binders that nobody will do anything with. Any of that sound familiar? Well, here's the first secret I want to tell you about. If you want to get out of your business, if you want to eliminate chaos, the first step is to focus on nailing the handoff with your team. I'll explain that more. Have you ever thought this? Everything's in my head. My processes, my systems, my ideas, everything from estimating, creating scopes of work, what to look for, the sales process, how to qualify leads, how to negotiate, how to schedule. Everything is in my head. Maybe you wish you could do what this guy's doing and just plug some sort of magic cable into your noggin and get all the good stuff out, not the crazy stuff, just the good stuff. Well, if that's you, if you think, yeah, everything is actually stuck in my head, then you're not alone. But my question for you is, if everything's stuck in your head, what's the biggest problem that's causing for you right now? If everything is stuck in your head, think about the problems that's causing. Maybe every decision falls in your lap because it's all stuck in your head. Your team doesn't know the process because it's all stuck in your head. You can't really hold anyone accountable. Your team doesn't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know what your expectations are. They don't know what the process is because they can't read your mind. If you've watched one of the Star Wars movies, there's a famous scene in The Return of the Jedi when General Akbar says this, "It's a trap." And there's a trap, to be more specific, a thinking trap that 90% of contractors fall into, and it's the cause of a lot of your problems. It has nothing to do with safety and it has nothing to do with software. It is a thinking trap. And it also happens to be the kryptonite to every software. So what is the thing that can seriously weaken or take the power away from BusyBusy and every other software, just like kryptonite did to Superman? What if there's something that will make or is making your software practically useless? Would you like to know that? Well, it turns out that this thinking trap is the kryptonite. So let's take a look at what that is. Here's the old way of creating profit. If you think about it, at the most basic level, a construction company converts contracts to profit, right? So the old way to create profit is all you need to do is do free estimates, plug in allowances in your contracts, put in plug numbers for things you didn't get pricing on, start projects with missing selections or even incomplete design. One of my favorite traps, let's fast track the project. Let's use just-in-time ordering. We have scope gaps that we don't know about. One of the favorite statements is, let's get started and we'll figure it out later. We'll just figure it out as we go. When there are gaps, you have to jump in and just do it yourself. When it comes to standard operating procedures, maybe you have stacks of dusty 3-ring binders full of SOPs that nobody looks at. Maybe you've signed up for software and thought software will fix my problems, only to find out it doesn't. Or creating complex schedules, complex Gantt charts, and then doing all of that. And then maybe you'll have some profit left at the end. Do any of these look familiar? Well, so this is the just enough to start trap. This is doing just enough to start. It's what we call the JETS trap. Just enough to start. Doing just enough to get the estimate out the door, just enough to get a contract signed, just enough to get a permit application in, just enough to get someone hired, just enough to get a crew mobilized and get started. The just enough to start trap. And the reason I say that this JETS trap is like kryptonite that affects almost every part of your business is if you're doing just enough to start and you're constantly putting out fires, if you're constantly in reactive mode, then you won't be able to communicate confidently because you don't know what's coming up. If you fall into the JETS trap, your pre-construction planning is probably non-existent. Scheduling is very difficult because you're stuck in the today. You're stuck in the day-to-day firefighting and you can't look ahead. You also won't have time or won't make the time to do strategic planning and look at the big picture. Recruiting and hiring is tough because everything's a surprise. Surprise, you're understaffed. Surprise, you're out of work and you need to let somebody go. Last but not least, it affects your financials. If materials and subs are being scheduled at the last minute, there are schedule delays, and that ultimately affects your cash flow, and all of these things affect your profitability. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. That's why it's like kryptonite to all construction software. If you're stuck in the just enough to start trap, you can't communicate proactively, you can't plan projects, you can't schedule confidently, you can't plan your business effectively, you can't grow your team, and no software program will work for you if you're stuck in this trap. Think about it. Does this make any sense? Do other industries use this process? Imagine if you went to the truck dealership and you ordered an $80,000 truck. And a few weeks later, they called and said, "Hey, Todd, we're real excited about your truck. Which engine did you want in that?" And then you told them what engine you wanted, and then they called you a week later and said, "Hey, we're ready to put the upholstery in, or we're ready to paint." And they just, as needed, they kept asking you for selections. What interior do you want? What do you want, a sunroof or not? Or what kind of tires do you want on it? Do you want a hitch on it? They just kept asking for that stuff piecemeal. No, they don't do that. They want all the information up front. So think about this. What problems are you having because of the just enough to start trap? How many of your phone calls and messages can be traced back to doing just enough to start? How many frustrated trade partners? Maybe how many frustrated customer calls are you getting? How many times are you apologizing to clients because you're doing just enough? But we'll talk about profit bleeds in just a minute. So the real question is, how do you solve it? How do you become immune to this kryptonite of just enough? Let me show you. This is the old way of converting a construction contract into profit, okay? We have this pre-construction phase, We're trucking along doing pre-construction, and then we start construction and we continue doing pre-construction activities well into construction, sometimes almost all the way to the end. And where there's overlap, there's chaos. Where there's overlap between pre-construction activities and construction, there's chaos. Design changes, selections getting finalized, ordering materials late, only to find out it'll take months to get there, or finding out it's discontinued. Changes, questions, missing information, scope gaps, allowances that got busted. Chaos. This is what the just enough to start trap looks like. Think about the ripple effect of the just enough to start mindset. Your field crews, your trade partners have 50 to 70% of the information they need. When they get stuck, they can either guess at what to do, or they can call someone. Who are they going to call? Probably you, maybe multiple people. This also applies to hiring employees. What happens when you hire someone and you give them just enough to start? What happens then? When you fast track a project and you do just enough to get a contract signed so you can start, what happens then? So be honest. Are you sometimes guilty of the just enough to start thinking trap? Think about this for a minute. How does this JETS, this just enough to start mindset, cause stress for you? And how is it keeping you stuck in your business? If you're like a lot of people, this is the root cause of a lot of the reasons you're stuck in your business, stuck in day-to-day firefighting, stuck dealing with details falling through the cracks, having to step in and fix problems. So let me show you the new way. If you want to get out of this mess, here's what you do. You have a pre-construction phase, and then there's a break between the end of pre-construction and construction. And here's what happens in that break. You nail the handoff. The handoff is a clearly defined handoff, like in a relay race, a handoff of information, accountability, and communication. It's giving the field crews everything they need to finish instead of just enough to start. So think about it. What would it be like if your projects were like this? If your field crews had everything they need to finish, what would that do for you? Would that reduce the number of phone calls you deal with? Reduce the number of fires you have to put out? What would it do to the stress level of your team? How would it affect your trade partners? Do you think your customers might feel it? Maybe so. Here's how to go about this, okay? 3-step process to nail the handoff. Step number 1 is to design your nail the handoff process with your team. That is incredibly important. Step 2 is to create your "this is how we do it" document. You may be wondering, wasn't that the title of a 90s hip hop song? You're exactly right. It is. And chances are you're singing that song in your head right now. This is how we do it. Step 3 is, if you want, you can build your process into your pre-construction schedule template using your scheduling software. Would you like to see how you can begin designing your nail the handoff process with your team? And you may be wondering, why do I need to do this with my team? I can design a process. Well, here's why. Because I'll put it this way. Your team will run through walls to implement a plan that they were part of developing. But they will find all the reasons your plan won't work. So if you want your team to actually implement a process, save yourself a lot of headache and get them involved in the development of the process. Very common mistake I see is people going into their cave, going into their office, closing their door, typing furiously away, creating processes, and then attempting to shove them down the throats of their team and being disappointed at why their team won't follow them. It's because people will actively resist something they weren't part of developing. Trust me on this. Save yourself a lot of headache. So here's how you can design your nail the handoff process. I'll give you a really quick overview. First of all, get a stack of Post-it notes, get your team together in a room and write the word handoff on one of the Post-it notes, slap it on the right side of the wall, and then ask your team, what do you need to have a fully handed off project? What would it take for you to have everything you need to finish this project before you start? And you start working from right to left, working backwards from that handoff. And you'd probably come up with some tasks like, well, we need to have permit applications in. We should order long lead materials. We should probably have a signed contract, maybe collect a deposit. You know, it'd be great. Detailed scopes of work for each trade, maybe even purchase orders. You start working your way back through and you'll get to the selections phase. And you may decide, gosh, it'd be great if we had everything selected before we start. You may be wondering, Todd, are you saying we should have all the selections made before we start? Yes, I am. And then you might even think, there are a few things we could do during the design process that would make the handoff better. And then if you're really thinking, you might say, there are a few things we could do during the sales process to set the expectations with the client, some information we could get that would make all of this go so much smoother. And then what you have in front of you is your handoff process. And it's very important that you do this with your team. Speaking of Post-it notes, I recommend you write this phrase, this question on a Post-it note on your wall, stick it on your computer monitor. How can this be the last time I answer this question? If you want to get out of your business, get out of day-to-day firefighting, you need to answer questions one last time. And a good way to do that is with your handoff process, and then take the next step, which is to create a process document from all of those Post-it notes. Put it in a Google Doc, put it somewhere where it lives online, and it becomes a reference document for your team. It becomes a training guide for new hires. It becomes a place for answering frequently asked questions. When somebody asks you a question, you can say, great question. I'll update the "this is how we do it" document. You can see the answer in there. So think about that. Imagine having a document that explains this is how we do it. Your team is all doing it the same way. New hires can use it for training. You can answer questions once. When an issue comes up, you don't have to wonder, is this a people issue or is this a process issue? Wouldn't that be great? And then what if you could automate your process and bake it into your scheduling software? Ultimately, that's where you want to go. We don't have time to get into that today. So this is Jeff Bowers. He's the owner of Masterpiece Builders. He's a 40-year veteran of the construction industry, and he went through our Systematize Your Construction Business program, and our Director of Customer Success, Leah Valgardson, asked him a question, and I want to share his answer with you. Let's listen to that.
Program. Was there a specific moment or a part of the program that you were like, oh my gosh, yes, this is the money for me. This is where it's really going to change my business?
Yeah. You guys call it nailing the handoff. And that intrigued me when Todd was talking about systematizing our business, kind of nailing the handoff. And I've really become a true believer that he's right, that the vast majority of our ills and where our inefficiencies were just in loose specs, a lot of the handoff. He's right. And so once I started to go through that part of the program of documenting what the pre-construction process should look like for us, I felt like, yeah, this is a home run. This is what do you call it? The secret sauce. This is the secret sauce.
So let's recap about nailing the handoff. Avoid the just enough to start thinking trap. Start by documenting your pre-construction process, design it with your team, create your process document. So imagine that. Imagine having all of that information in hand before you start a project. How much smoother would your projects be? What will it be like for you knowing that your team has all of the big decisions made in advance? So my question for you, that I would challenge you to, or ask you to answer in the chat box in just a couple of words. What's this going to do for you? Imagine you have a documented process that your team has bought into. Everybody's doing it the same way. What's this going to do for you? Put that in the chat box. I'd be curious to know what you think. What would this do for you? You feel like it would reduce stress for your team, increase stress for your team, reduce phone calls for you? What would that do for you? We'll pause for just a minute. What would this do for you to have this process in place? All right. Jason said, make things smoother and allow me more time to do what I really want to be doing and make the customers happy. Yeah. Rick said, answer questions before they're asked. Right on. Yeah. One of our clients named Jake Lewandall went through this process with his team. And he said, as soon as he designed this process with his team, there were a couple of things that came out of it. One, his phone calls went down by about 40 to 50% because the team was bought into it. And then he also realized that there were some folks who hadn't, one guy specifically on his team who hadn't really said much. He had some great ideas. All right, let's get moving. We've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's talk about the second secret I want to talk to you about, that growing your team can mean less work for you. A lot of people tell me they believe that hiring people means more work and more stress. They might think, I'm really busy now. I don't have time to tell more people what to do. Why grow this thing that's sucking the life out of me? A lot of people are stuck. They have all this demand. They need to grow, but they don't know how, or they can't. They feel stuck. Any of that sound familiar? What if growing your team could actually mean less work for you? Would you like to learn how to do that, or why that is? Let me introduce you to Manish Cartier. This is Manish on the right, and his wife, Michelle Cartier. They're from Australia. They run a business in Brisbane, Australia. They do remodeling. And here's where he was before we started working together. He was working 6 to 7 days a week, working 70 plus hours a week. He thought growth is bad. No thanks. We started putting some of these systems in place. He transitioned out of the field into the office. His revenue went up 30% with the same team. Now, after this, he was excited about growing the business. He made a key hire, and he got to the point where he could run his business in 8 hours a week. In fact, he came to the US in October of last year for a live event that I hosted, and he and his wife, Michelle, and their baby spent 2 weeks in the US, and their business ran smoothly for 2 weeks without them. Here's what Manish said. It's shown me how I can actually improve my career goals instead of being stuck doing a job that I've never really enjoyed doing. Now the focus is to get there. I need to get these people involved. It really changed my perspective in terms of growth. Now growth is exciting. I'd recommend every business owner that's sick of overtime and weekends just to keep afloat needs to do this. There is another way to get where you want to go. So what is this that he's talking about? What's the exercise that he went through that changed the way he thought and helped him go from working 70 hours a week to 8 hours a week and be able to be gone for 2 weeks out of the country? Well, the first step was to design your company for the future. This is the exercise that he wished he'd done earlier that changed his mind about growth. Think about this. When you build something, what's the first thing you do? Hopefully, it's to put the foundation in. So the definition of a foundation, it's the part of the building below the ground typically, and it provides support for the main structures that appear above the ground, the part you can see. And the job of the foundation that I learned when I was studying structural engineering back at the University of Kentucky, the foundation transfers the load from the building to the earth. Live loads, dead loads, wind loads, snow loads, it transfers the load from the building or the structure, whether it's a wind turbine, a cell phone tower, a high rise, or a custom home, single family home. The job of the foundation is to transfer the load from the building to the ground. Now, if you had an organizational chart, it might look like this. You in the middle of everything, and everything goes through you. Have you ever felt like every employee, every trade partner, every supplier, every customer has to come to you? Maybe you feel like this guy, Atlas, carrying the weight of the world alone, where you are the foundation of your business. All of the load of the business goes through you. Ever felt like that? So how do you begin to design your company for the future? A lot of people want to let go of control, but they're afraid to. So how do you let go of control in a smart way? How do you distribute the load of your business better so it's not all on you? Here's how you do that: by designing what's called your accountability chart for the future. You need to design your accountability chart for the future. The accountability chart, let me talk about what that is. The accountability chart defines each seat. If you think about the functions or the roles in your business, it defines each seat's expected outcomes and how they tie to the success of the organization. The accountability chart ensures that every person knows exactly who to address an issue with based on accountability, not based on who reports to whom. At a most basic level, there are at least 3 major functions in every business. Let's talk about what they are. Doesn't matter whether you're in manufacturing, run a nail salon, a construction company, or a billion-dollar organization. There are 3 major functions in each business. Sales, which is to get work. Operations, to manufacture the widget, to deliver the goods, provide the service, etc. And finance, which is to count the money. At the most basic level, there are a minimum of 3 major functions in every business. So if you want to start getting out of your business, you need to start delegating results to other people. You need to start putting other names in these boxes. So here are some ground rules for designing your accountability chart. And I'll show you a very popular accountability chart that a lot of our construction business clients are using. But here are some ground rules. Number 1, design for the future. You must look forward. You want to design this for 2 years in the future. Don't get caught looking backwards. Don't get caught in the present. This is not an exercise in organizing the current people you have. This is answering the question, what do you want? How do you want your business to run? You'll need to detach yourself from the existing business, detach from your current role, probably detach from your comfort zone, and maybe even from your ego. You'll need to make long-term decisions. You need to elevate yourself above the business, look down on it, and make decisions for the long-term greater good of the company. And no names yet. We're not putting names in yet. This is not there are 2 fundamental ways to design your business. One is to design your business around the people you currently have and try to fill in the gaps yourself. This is a fundamentally different way. This is designing the business to run the way you want it to run. And if you want to get out of your business, this is the way to do that. Here's a very popular model for construction businesses, especially those who embrace the concept of nailing the handoff. There's a major function of sales and business development. Pre-construction is a major function that's separate from sales and operations. Operations is a major function. And then there's the finance and admin major function. And then there's the integrator role. There's also a visionary role. So this becomes the foundation of your business that transfers the load of the business to multiple people instead of you carrying all of that load. This is John Voitas. He's the owner of Paxis Group, custom home builder and remodeler in Georgia, working in a couple of markets in Georgia. A little over a year and a half ago, John led his team through the process of developing their accountability chart. And here is John talking about his experience after doing this.
I think I have the freedom to look forward is probably the biggest thing. If I tried to look forward in the past, I wasn't sure that the ball was being managed right, or didn't have that, not trust level, but just didn't have the experience or know that the people were in those places, if they could do those jobs or not. So now, we're a few months removed from actually implementing this, and it's been really good to allow me to be much more forward looking, as opposed to just be stuck in the next 4 to 6 hours. And I can go a day without looking at my email right now and not worry about, oh my gosh, did I miss something that need to be critically handled? Because I've got people that have all of those different facets. They know that they're responsible for that. And if someone needs something, then I know it's, they can reach out to me and they can schedule time with me. It's not truly putting out fires in a short period of time, or else it's going to become something negative. And we didn't have a lot of bad situations. It was just, like I said, it was a lot of noise, and that's been eliminated, just greatly.
So when your accountability chart is designed, when you design your organization for the future, here's what you can expect. You'll have clearly defined lanes, clarity on who's accountable for what results. Speaking of clarity, there'll be clarity for you on, do you have the right people in the right seat? Clarity for your team on what the future opportunities look like in your company. There'll be fewer gaps and less toe stepping. Typically, when there's a lack of clarity around roles and responsibilities, either nobody is doing something or multiple people are duplicating efforts. There'll be less of that. The major roles and their priorities are established, which means you can delegate results instead of tasks and activities. You'll be able to avoid hiring mistakes or unnecessary hires, and you'll have time to steer the ship because you'll be freed up. There'll be less noise, like John talked about. So I'm curious for you, when you have this in place, when you have your organization designed, put this in the chat box. What's going to be the best part for you? I'm curious. What's going to be the best part for you when you have your organization designed for the future? We'll pause for just a minute. All right, Rick said number 2, clarity on who's accountable for results. Yeah, if you just want to put the number in there, that's perfect. Clarity on who's accountable for results. Wouldn't it be great to be able to delegate results instead of delegating tasks and having people come to you asking questions? Hey, what do I need to do today, boss? Because that question's already been answered. Yeah. All right. Lots of ground to cover. So let's get on to the third secret. You may be thinking, I can't afford to hire someone. If I do, I'll need to sell more work to keep them busy. I'll have to grow my overhead, but I won't have any more profit. The third secret is you can increase your profits by growing your team. It's very likely that you can afford to hire someone. And I would even go as far as to say, for some of you, it's possible that you can't afford not to hire someone. It's likely that you can afford to hire someone, and it's very possible that you can't afford not to. Let me explain that. Keep in mind this statement. You may want to write this down. If you have inefficiencies in your business, you are paying for it every day. If you have inefficiencies in your business, you are paying for it every day. It doesn't show up in your bank account, your statement anyway. You'll never see an invoice for it, but you're paying for it in the form of profit bleeds. So this balloon represents the potential profit in a contract. And there are two types of profit bleeds here if you look closely. First is the small leak, the little trickle up at the top. This is the maybe death by 1,000 paper cuts. But if you look closely, you'll see this dart incoming. It's going to wipe it out. It's going to pop that balloon. All the profit's going to be gone. These are two types of profit bleeds. You may be wondering, what are these profit bleeds? Let me show you an example of our profit bleed triage calculator. I'll show you an example. This is a fictitious example based on a pretty average company. We talk to hundreds of companies a year, and I'll just go through some typical profit bleeds and some typical amounts. You may be surprised how much they add up to. Let's take a look at profit bleeds. This can be an uncomfortable conversation, but the results are helpful. So bear with me. This fictitious company is doing about $2.5 million in revenue a year. They have 3 hourly employees out in the field. Average cost of labor is $45 per hour. This is all in, including fringe benefits, et cetera. And they're losing 60 minutes of productivity per day from some combination of looking for material, picking up material, driving to the supply houses, looking for information, waiting on material, extra trips to the job sites, wasted time, downtime, lost time, could be some stolen time. Add that up, 20 days a month, losing 60 minutes a day, which is pretty average, $2,700 a month. Up next is rework, building something twice, getting paid once. Could be because of a quality issue, wrong material, wrong location. A few recent examples I've heard, we painted all the trim the wrong color. We installed the siding wrong. We had to move some outlets for light sconces. The bathtubs came in, the plumber installed them, they were wrong. The tile was installed in the wrong direction. Example of a big one I heard was we framed a condo, built the roof trusses, and then found out late in the game that the roof trusses weren't designed for the rooftop HVAC equipment loads. That's a big one. Again, it can be death by 1,000 paper cuts, or it could be 1 or 2 big hits per year. In this case, about $2,000 a month on average. Up next is the one I hate the most, what I call unsolicited charity, doing work for free. Few flavors of this. The customer requested a change. We didn't catch it, or we caught it so late in the game, it's too late to bring it up. Subcontractor billed us for something, and we didn't bill for it. Throw-ins and giveaways at the end to make the customers happy. At the end of the project, hey, while you're here, could you do this little knick-knack stuff for us? In this case, it's a pretty low number, $2,000 a month. Wasted materials is pretty straightforward. It's not hard to add up to $1,000 a month. A few I-joist, LVLs, a few sheets of plywood, drywall that gets damaged, something grows legs and walks off the job. Then there are estimating and sales process misses. Maybe you missed a price increase. The sub you were based on backed out. You had an allowance that there was a bust in. The tile they picked is discontinued. This is $2,500 a month. And then schedule overruns of $2,000 a month. This is additional supervision, temporary toilets, dumpsters, etc. Total profit bleeds per month, $12,200 a month, $144,000 a year. It adds up, doesn't it? The next one is what I call opportunity cost. In this case, this contractor was losing 2 days of production a month. You add those up over the course of a year, you get a lost month, an entire month of production that's lost. This company was doing about $2.5 million in revenue, which means they could do another 200 grand of revenue a year by reclaiming those lost days. at 10% net profit, which is a low target, by the way, that's $20,000 bleeding out every year. So put these together. This company's bleeding out $166,000 a year, leaving $166,000, not of revenue, of bottom line net profit on the table. So a couple of questions for you. If you were leaving $166,000 on the table, do you think you could afford to make a key hire, like a superintendent, a project manager, or estimator, or selections coordinator, maybe even an operations manager? Would you still be more profitable than you are today with that person if they helped you eliminate these profit bleeds? Let's say you made a key hire. What would that free you up to do? Could you sell more? Maybe grow the business, train your team? And then with that key hire, could you handle more work and increase your revenue? That's why I say you can increase your profits by growing your team, or you may even realize you can't afford not to hire someone. But you may be thinking, Todd, aren't employees risky? Isn't it risky to hire people? What if they come in? What if I train them and they leave? What if I teach them all of my ways, take them under my wing and teach them all my ways, and they become a competitor? What if? Well, look, if you're currently wearing too many hats, if you're currently stressed out, if you're currently missing details, if you're currently working 60 to 70 hours a week, you're at risk right now. You're at risk of making a big mistake. You're at risk of a crucial detail falling through the cracks. You're at risk of losing a key customer. Your marriage could be at risk. Your health could be at risk. Your relationship with your kids could be at risk. What if something happens to you? Could your business function if something happened to you, if you were incapacitated for a few weeks, or God forbid, something even worse happened to you? And if your team is stressed and frustrated and running at the red line, you're at risk of losing someone right now. Maybe they're okay with it, but what about their spouse? One of our clients said, Todd, my people seem to be fine, but I am scared to death that their wife, somebody's wife, is going to tell them enough's enough, you need to find a new job. If there's chaos in your business, could your reputation with your customers be at risk? Here's the deal. Putting the right systems in place and bringing the right team on board reduces your risk. It makes your business more resilient. And there's a lot of talk about a recession these days. Putting the right foundation in place, having the right people and the right processes in place makes your business more recession-proof. So you may think employees are risky, but you're at risk right now, potentially. And adding the right people will reduce your risk. Let's recap what we've talked about. If I did my job, here's what I said I would do if I did my job. You'll learn how to design your company to run without you. That's the accountability chart and nailing the handoff. Two crucial steps to doing that. What to do if everything's stuck in your head. That's nailing the handoff and creating a process document. How to eliminate 80% of the job site chaos by nailing the handoff. And the just enough to start thinking trap that is the kryptonite to your organization. It could be the root cause of job site chaos and how to solve it. So 3 things to remember. Here's what you want to go home with. Focus on nailing the handoff with your team. Growing your team can mean less work for you, not more, because you can delegate results instead of activities. You can increase your profits by growing your team and reduce your risk by growing your team. So those are 3 secrets to getting out of your business. 3 secrets that construction business owners who have successfully gotten out of day-to-day firefighting understand. Okay, so we've been going on now for 50 minutes or so. Maybe you feel like this guy. There's no way to cover everything you need to get out of your business in an hour or even a few hours, even in a day. So we have put together a special program to help you get to the next level. If you want to get out of your business and make it run without you, then we have a program called the Systematize Your Construction Business program. Dozens of builders, remodelers, commercial general contractors, and specialty trade contractors, some of whom you've heard from today, have learned how to implement these crucial systems. But I want to warn you about a few things. There are a few other thinking traps to watch out for. One of them is this statement: we don't have time. Yeah, we need to, you may be thinking, we need to do this, but we don't have time. My question is, why don't you have time? Is the lack of time the problem, or is the lack of time a symptom of a lack of these systems and processes? Is the real problem that you've outgrown your systems? Is the real problem that you are the single point of contact, the foundation of your business? I had one of our clients came to me and said, Todd, I need some time management training for my superintendents. And it turned out what he needed was to learn how to nail the handoff and to have documented processes. So he and his team are going through our program. Another thing to watch out for is, yeah, we need to do this, but now isn't a good time. We're really busy, or we're really slow, or, the economy is kind of questionable. Why are you really busy? Is it because of the chaos and disorganization and inefficiency? Is that going to change? What if the economy slows down? Think about this. Will having these systems in place make you less likely to survive a recession or more likely to survive a recession? Another thing to watch out for is this thought. Yeah, things aren't that bad. Here's my couple of questions to think about. If you're dealing with these issues we talked about, are you really solving the issues, or are you just dealing with the symptoms? Are you really solving them, or are you just dealing with the symptoms? Think about the stress level. Think about your customer experience. Think about your profit margins. Which way are things trending? If you charted them over the past couple of years, do you like the direction they're trending? What happens if you wait until something breaks? What if something happens to you, right? What's the cost of inaction? There's a COI for every decision, a cost of inaction. It could be a financial cost. You could lose key employees. I've spoken with a lot of people who have stress-related health problems. That's the cost of inaction. Relationships are strained. That's a cost of inaction. Another thing to watch out for is what Jim Rohn calls the law of diminishing intent, which goes something like this. The longer you wait to take action, the less likely you are to take action. Here's what it sounds like. Yeah, we should do that. That's a great idea. We're going to do that. And then a day goes by, and then a week goes by, and then a month goes by, and we don't do anything. So here's a simple hack for defeating that law of diminishing intent, which is to separate the decision from the implementation. You may be thinking, yeah, we need to do this. I want to do this, but then you immediately get bogged down and overwhelmed by how are we going to do this? How are we going to implement this? Here's my advice. This is some advice from a lot of very successful CEOs when they need to make big moves. Decide on the outcome you want, what you want your business to look like in 12 months, 5 years. Make the decision of what you want and don't worry about the implementation for now. You'll figure out how to do it, but it starts with making a decision about what you want. Separate the decision from the implementation. Don't get bogged down in how you're going to do it. Just focus on what you want your business to look like. But decide that you want to make a change. And the real question you may want to think about is it worth investing 60 minutes for a call to see if Todd and his team can help? We work with a very small group of construction business owners at a time. We emphasize results. In fact, we guarantee results. We're not right for everybody, and that's okay. So if you are interested in talking to my team about how we can help you get out of your business and achieve some of the results we've talked about, then I would encourage you to go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply and schedule a call with us, and then fill out a brief application. And we'll get on the call. We'll talk about what the root causes of your biggest problems are, help you get clear on your goals and outcomes that you want to achieve, and then map out a game plan to get you from where you're at to where you want to be. It's a free call. It's not for everybody, though. These calls are exclusively for construction business owners, people who've been in business for a few years, doing at least $1 million in revenue and have a team. This is not for you if you're doing less than $1 million in revenue, if you are a solopreneur, in other words, you have no team or you haven't started your business yet. If you just want general advice, or if you're planning to start a business, you just want to pick our brain, then we're not a fit, not a good fit. But if you do own a business, if you're like a lot of our clients who are builders, remodelers, commercial GCs, and specialty trade contractors who want to get out of their business. They want to be the CEO of a business that's very profitable and runs without them to some degree. You can hear from some of those folks over at constructionleadingedge.com/results. We interview a lot of our clients to share their stories there. You can check that out. You can also listen to quite a few success stories on the Construction Leading Edge podcast. Check that out. And one thing I did promise, if you want that onboarding guide with 59 questions your new employee needs you to answer that they may not ask, then you can go to this link, constructionleadingedge.com/get out, GETOUT. You can download the PDF there. And let's talk about some questions. Again, if you want to take the next step and see how we can help you get out of your business and stop owning a job and owning a business, move from wearing all the hats to being the CEO, being the true business owner, then I would encourage you to go schedule a call with my team over at constructionleadingedge.com/apply. All right, if you have questions about anything I've talked about today, now's the time to type those in the chat box. I'll cover a few frequently asked questions up front. One of which is, if I do this stuff, will this help me if I want to sell my business someday? The short answer is yes. And a longer answer is, you probably won't be able to sell your business without doing these things. People who want to buy, most of the people who want to buy a business, they don't want to buy a job. They want to buy a business that runs without them. They don't want to buy a business that runs around or is built to fail without the business owner. So designing the organization, having documented processes, those are two of the crucial steps if you want to sell your business someday, or if you want to step away from the business someday and retire. So absolutely. Let's see. Does it matter what kind of software I use? Absolutely not. These crucial systems have nothing to do with the software that you use. You don't need to use a certain type of software in order to put these systems in place. Another question we typically get about this presentation is, can I get a copy of the slides? Can you send me a PDF of the slides? And the answer is no. And here's why. Because the slides aren't going to do you any good, okay? It may seem like a good idea. Yeah, I'll get the slides. I'll look at them later, and then I'll do something with that. I'm here to tell you that looking at the slides, it's not going to do you any good. So we're not going to help. We're not going to enable that. We're going to help you by saying no. Let's put it that way. So those are a few of the other questions, a few of the questions we get most frequently. Another one is, why should I do this with my team? Well, there's a great book written by a psychiatrist. It's called Instant Influence. And there's a statement I took away from it, which was, people change when they hear themselves say why they want to. People change when they hear themselves say why they want to. They don't change when they hear you say why they should. They change when they hear themselves say why they want to. That's why it's crucial to include your team in the development of your nail the handoff process.
And one question that I did see come in is the webinar going to be available to view later? It is. We'll email the recording to everybody. It'll also be available just on our website as well. So on BusyBusy's website, but we'll email that out. So like one question was they wanted to share it with management. So that is, yeah, you'll be able to share this and have that conversation to figure out what makes sense for your business.
Yep, great questions. Great questions. All right, what other questions do you have? Put those in the chat box. Or if you don't have a question, if there was something that you found helpful, then be curious to know what was most valuable about this webinar. If you could type that in, that would be helpful. Either question or what was most valuable, if anything. Or if it was just a gigantic waste of time, then put that in there too. Let's see. Do you have other resources on how to approach hiring to have a better success of getting the right person in the right seat? A lot of that is in our program. You could go listen to our podcast. We talk a lot about that, having the right people in the right seat on the podcast, but we go really deep into that in our Systematize Your Construction Business program. How to establish, it really starts with the accountability chart. What results are they accountable for? And but it really starts from that. All right, Rick said it was not a waste of time. Good, I appreciate that. I'm going to take a screenshot of that. Probably put that on my website, maybe. Not a waste of time. Good. Yeah, we don't have a dedicated HR, and most of our hires have been costly mistakes. Yeah. What I find is a lot of those mistakes go back to unclear expectations when hiring. The hiring process, that's a whole other, that's a whole other webinar there, but it all, before you hire someone, my advice is design your accountability chart, design your organization for the future. Look at the whole picture of the company and where it should be in the future and start from there.
Awesome. And if any other questions come in, we'll make sure and get those to Todd. But I think we're pretty well through questions at this point. Todd, appreciate you being on here and chatting with us. Every time we have you on for a webinar, it like Rick said, not a waste of time. So it's been super informative. Appreciate you being on here. And again, we'll shoot the webinar recording out to everybody as well. And yeah, if you have additional questions, go check out constructionleadingedge.com and get those questions answered. And appreciate everybody jumping on with us here today. And hopefully we see you guys next time.
Ryan, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, folks. And let me know if there's some way we can help you. And be sure to go check out episode 288 of the Construction Leading Edge podcast with Isaac, CEO of BusyBusy. Good. Lots of great stuff. He's a incredibly wise man. He's been through a lot of stuff, a lot of nuggets in there.
Absolutely. I appreciate the shout out there, Todd. Okay. See you, everybody.